On June 9th took place the Xbox Games Showcase, during which we were treated with a brand new trailer for S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chernobyl, which I must say looks amazing. Hello Stalkers and welcome to the Anomalous Dugout. We all know why you are here, so let's get started straight away. In the opening scene, Skif is climbing a ladder, breathing heavily. Who knows what kind of trouble he went through down there. As he emerges, he thankfully bumps into his friend Richter, a character we've already seen in previous trailers and talked about quite a lot.
Скіфе, радий тебе бачити, друже.
To sum up, Richter is the one who gave Skif a bolt and taught him how to use it in order to navigate anomalies, and it seems the two men became good friends. Richter is still equipped with his Walkman cassette player and headphones, but he does not have a Soviet flare anymore, an object that he was seen carrying in the Not a Paradise trailer. Additionally, we finally see what kind of weapon he is using, a simple PMM pistol. He must be from the PMM gang.
Валимо звідси.
Not much to say here besides that the corridor looks great. Exactly what you would expect from an abandoned bunker in the zone. The door appears rusted and heavy, but Richter manages to open it.
Ви тільки погляньте на це. Край, чарівний край Черемоша й прута. Ти моя любов, ти рідна матінко моя. Жива.
The song is called My Native Land by Ukrainian composer Mykola Mozgovoi. I guess we now know what kind of music Richter was listening to. In the previous trailers, it seemed Richter is the type of person to actually enjoy life in the zone and appreciate its beauty to the fullest, something that is quite rare among stalkers. This scene is pretty much confirmation he treats the zone as his home. The fact that he only uses a simple PMM as a weapon may also indicate that he likes to live in peace with the zone, which reminds of characters with similar beliefs such as Hermit or Doctor. Basically, the idea is that if you go into the zone without the intention to harm it, it won't harm you back. Anyway, I can understand why Richter feels this way. The zone looks stunning in some of these scenes. The vegetation is plenty and very well detailed, but not too dense at the same time. Add in the beautiful sun rays, birds passing by in the distance, as well as the decaying buildings and vehicles. Oh, and of course the Tesla anomaly casually passing by to top it all off. Just perfect. However, don't let this give you the wrong impression. The zone can also be very bleak at times. It is an extremely dangerous place where a lot of misery and suffering has and continues to happen. More on this later. It is interesting that this trailer was also in Ukrainian, just like Not a Paradise, and this time the facial animations and lip syncing were done correctly. Next up, we briefly see the PDA map in action. Obviously this is the Rostok factory, which we will see in all its glory very soon. We can spot a few differences, like the fact the whole facility was rotated to the side, and some adjustments to the roads and train tracks. I absolutely love the fact that they fixed the railroads, which did not make much sense before. If we rewind a bit, we will see some interesting landmarks, like the entrance of an underground bunker, possibly the one from the previous scene, an unknown complex, and of course the famous vehicle graveyard, which is most likely the very same we've seen in the Not a Paradise trailer. Going back to Rostok, we see plenty of icons on top of the area. Mollit, our beloved community manager at GSC, shed some light on them. The wrench represents technicians who will be able to perform upgrades to our equipment. The question mark indicates an undiscovered area or an important character. The bag is for traders, the cross for medics, the bed a place to sleep, and the fireplace a hub, most likely a spot where many stalkers gather and where you will be able to find information and work. It's nothing we haven't seen before, though it's still nice to know about these. We also see a blue flag on the map, possibly the site of a side quest. Moving on, the top of the screen reveals the other tabs in the PDA. Here comes Monolith to the rescue. The map helps you navigate the world. It's pretty self-explanatory. The journal contains your missions with their progress and all the data required to complete them. The notes store the audio recordings and text messages you find so that you can check them whenever needed. Great for us lore enthusiasts. The upgrades section will come handy when going to technicians to upgrade weapons and armors. It will also contain info about what you need to perform certain modifications. In the previous games, all technicians were unique with their own abilities and preferences, some oriented towards guns, others more handy with bodysuits, etc. Rare upgrades could only be made by certain technicians. For example, Cardon was the only person able to install the sprint modification on the exoskeleton. I am guessing such differences between mechanics, with what they can and can't do, will be listed in this tab. Furthermore, they also sometimes require the data stored in PDAs or flash drives, as well as the proper tools before they could make the modifications. The upgrades section will also probably keep track of that. Lastly, the tutorial is where you'll find information and tips on how to play. Now, there are two tabs which were left out. The statistics, where surely you will be able to see how many stalkers and mutants you've killed, number of quests completed, your best weapon, and other exploits of your own. And then the archive. If my intuition is correct, this will be the revival of the encyclopedia from Shadow of Chernobyl, where articles about pretty much everything in the zone accumulated as you played. This was an invaluable source of information for new players and veterans alike, so I'm really hoping this is what it is. The commands here clearly indicate this is being played on a controller, and seem to reveal that we will be able to place our own markers on the map. Moreover, we see the zoom magnitude on the left, and what looks to be the crosshair on the right. Above the tabs, we seem to have the player's current location listed in the top left corner, and the time of day as well as battery in the top right corner. It is possible the battery of the PDA could be a feature where you have to recharge it or use batteries to power it. However, I feel like it won't be the case. Then we see the animation for closing down the PDA, and Rostok, the 100 rats bar. We can even see the sign is still there, and several stalkers are hanging around. In addition, another sign was set up which reads Bazaar. Most likely this will be some kind of market with various goods for sale installed within this famous hangar. Above the bar, we can see a strange sphere-looking anomaly. It could be a space anomaly or the new bubble one, yet it has a different appearance. It's less transparent, so to speak, so I'm more inclined to think it's a brand new hazard. Above it on the radar, we find the same icons we were able to see on the map earlier. Oh, and hello Duga, I knew you were hiding somewhere. Continuing with the scene, Skif quickly turns around, giving us even more views of the remade Rostok. I can say with confidence that they nailed it. In this scene, Skif receives a transmission from a man named Mugwort. It seems he just gave an urgent task to our protagonist. In a hurry, Skif pulls out an SVU sniper rifle, a weapon present in the original trilogy but which we had not yet seen in the new game. He reloads, takes aim and shoots. Alright, there's a lot to see here, so rewind. Firstly, here's the CNPP. Secondly, this used to be the duty base, remember? But something's amiss. Let's keep looking. As a Skif aims down the scope, the option is given to hold a breath. Not a first for FPS games, but a new feature in S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Probably we can expect a better sniping experience, especially with the large scale of the playable map and many vantage points to take position. Another detail I want to point out is the detection indicator. Since the Bolts and Bullets trailer, we've seen this white arc pop up in various scenes, which we believe warns the player that he has been detected. Here we can notice it in action. The marker appears right as the weapon is fired. Now I want you to focus on this guy. Yep, that's right. This is a Freedomer. He's wearing a similar suit as was shown in one of the developers' diaries. In a shocking turn of events, it appears Rostok was taken over by Freedom in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. If you saw the map, it might not come off as much of a surprise since the inscription Fraudsters was written on top of the bar, which we suspected could be related to bandits or Freedom. In case you are not entirely convinced, the duty banner at the entrance of the basement has been replaced with a Freedom one. And that's not all. On this wall we can read an inscription that translates to "Don't know what you're worth? Mikluha will tell you." Mikluha was a legendary leader of Freedom mentioned in Shadow of Chernobyl during the rush to the center of the zone. According to the stories, he and his team had managed to bypass the brain scorcher and survive in Prypiat for a whole month, before the antennas were finally shut down and people moving north discovered them. It is unclear what Mikluha's fate ended up being, as various versions of the tale had different outcomes. Some claimed all his men came back alive, while others said they were all lost to the zone. Probably the truth stood in the middle, and it looks like this interesting and almost mystical character might be back in Heart of Chernobyl. There could be many reasons as to why and how Freedom has replaced duty in this area. We need to remember that the new game takes place many years after the previous one, probably a decade in fact, meaning a lot of things must have changed in the zone. Going into more details, the anomaly seen above the bar reminds me of the fact that anomalies move around due to the emissions. It is possible a lot of new anomalies appeared in Rostok at some point in time, rendering the area less hospitable and prompting duty to leave. Another possibility is that the duty faction was weakened and forced to give up on the location, a situation that could be the result of Operation Zenith, which we talked about in the previous video about the ARG. Indeed, in the documents we learned that in 2013 a peace treaty was established between major factions, including Duty, and the formed alliance took part in an operation aimed at disabling the generators, codename Zenith. However, the mission was a complete disaster, resulting in a large loss of life and resources, an outcome that shattered the trust that had been established between the groups. It is very much possible that Duty, believing that the success of the endeavor would be a huge step towards their goal of destroying the zone, invested a lot in the operation and subsequently suffered many casualties. As a result, they would have lost a lot of power in the zone. But I could be wrong, this is just a theory. A S.T.A.L.K.E.R theory. In the following scene, Skif is exploring the unfinished cooling tower for Reactor 5. The level of details in this recreation of the real-life location is absolutely astonishing. It seems the developers modeled it down to every block of concrete, pipe and metal rod. By the way, we can briefly see the other cooling tower that is even more unfinished. In his hands, the hero is holding the UDP Compact, which we've seen before, and the good old bear detector, remade to the finest details. It has spotted an artifact, which means it's time to talk about this giant anomaly. Most certainly an arch anomaly, this fire whirlwind is imposing and looks great. We can see the deformations due to the hot air around it, and you can almost feel the warmth of the whole thing from this far away. Moreover, the anomaly appears to generate a lot of smoke that accumulates at the top of the tower. Honestly, this is exactly what you should expect from large anomalous formations this close to the center of the zone, so I can't wait to see more. I wonder if we will be able to climb at the very top of the tower. By the way, in this scene as well as many others, we could see a blue color within the compass indicator. In Bolts and Bullets, we had the same thing but in yellow, which indicates when the character is standing in an area related to the main quest. Therefore, it is very likely the blue color is used for secondary quests. The bar even expands the closer we get. So it seems yellow is the color for the main story missions and blue for secondary tasks. Next up, the protagonist is fighting a psychic Pseudodog in what appears to be the Great Swamp. In fact, the location reminds of the burnt farm, with the wooden fences, broken house containing the burner anomalies, and the small tower. First of all, the shotgun seems to pack a good punch, which is always appreciated. I am not entirely sure what model it is though. According to Mullet, its in-game name will be the M860 Cracker, so I'm guessing it's probably inspired by the Remington 870. When shot, the psychic copies of the dog burst out into a small cloud of bluish particles and fur. It is a bit different from the original visuals, though the idea remains the same. As for the dogs themselves, they also look slightly different, yet I can't really point out what it is. Probably their face? Either way, it does not necessarily mean all pseudodogs will be like this, since we know mutant species will have different variants depending on their habitat. Perhaps swamp pseudodogs look this way, and for example, forest pseudodogs will have a different appearance. One awesome detail in this scene is the fact one of the mutants was able to push an old tire on the ground. This seems to confirm there will be such loose objects and props in the world. What else? Oh, for all of you tractor fans, here's what you need. Moving on, the next couple of scenes take us to the ghost city of Prypiat. Firstly, this location is the school number 1, a building that was in Call of Prypiat, which has been used extensively in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2's marketing. The classroom looks very detailed, with old furniture, textbooks and other objects laying around, all left in their place during the evacuation of the town more than 3 decades ago. The assault rifle held by Skif is the IWI Carmel, which seems to be called Karod in the game. Here we see the broken part of the school, which in real life collapsed due to an accumulation of water in the structure. In Call of Prypiat, this is where you could find a powerful whirligig anomaly. The clock is stopped at 1:23 AM, the time of the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. According to the furniture, this shot appears to take place in the Prypiat Hospital, another iconic location both in reality and in-game. Indeed, in 1986 this is where the first victims of radioactivity were admitted, and the basement is infamous for being extremely contaminated due to the fact it contains the suits of the firefighters sent on site. In Call of Prypiat, this was the site of an intense shootout with the Monolith, memorable for the preacher's speech. Here Skif uses the Kipari submachine gun, apparently called Bucket S2 in the game. Then the protagonist faces a threat in an unknown bunker-like, possibly underground location. Could be an ex-laboratory judging from all the equipment. Now, there are a few things to be said about this enemy. Of course, we believe it is a Poltergeist, though it is clearly different from its counterpart from the original trilogy. Firstly, it does not really have an electrical appearance anymore. Rather, it looks more like a bluish cloud. Secondly, at this moment it is staying completely still, while poltergeists never stopped moving in the previous games. Thirdly, the creature learned a new trick to protect itself from incoming bullets by creating a shield with surrounding debris. I actually had the chance to meet such an entity when I played the demo around 8 months ago, and I can say it did lift and throw objects exactly like a poltergeist. Unfortunately, I ran out of time to take a closer look at it. It is possible this is the new version of the poltergeist, or there will be several different variations of the monster and this is only one of them. In order to fight it, Skif is using a PP-19 Bison, which we had not yet seen with a Cobra sight. This gun will come to be known as the ZUBR-19 in the game. In the next scene, the character fights bandits in the yard of the Dark Valley's main factory. The location has been recreated beautifully, with the dilapidated buildings and elements of the construction site laying everywhere. Indeed, it should be noted this facility was never finished, as the project was stopped during construction due to the disaster. I especially love the inclusion of a cement mixer. It really shows everything was left on site untouched for all these years. Anyway, Skif whips out the Karad and takes down the first enemy while he's throwing a grenade, who thus drops his AK in a rather clunky manner. At the same time, an explosion occurs right behind him. This is probably a grenade tossed earlier by the player, since at the very beginning of the scene Skif is equipped with the RGD-5 before switching to his rifle. Then he reloads the gun with the double magazine, before killing 2 more thugs. This is when we hear the updated bandit slander. The phrase "I caught a bullet" is a reference to a famous line from the original games that translates to "I caught an olive." We can notice various new designs for their suits, which I like because bandits had very little variety in their appearance in the previous games. Apparently, this specific armor will be called Marauder in the game. Another detail to see here is the fact that there are 4 different bullet types available to this 5.56mm weapon, meaning we'll be getting more variations for ammunition as well. Lastly, one of the few things that were criticized in the trailer was the NPC AI, because the enemies appear to be very dumb during the firefights. It is true this bandit is basically standing there not doing much. However, as many people suspected, this is actually an intended behavior used in trailers to improve cinematic action. Characters won't act this way in the game. Monolith confirmed this in one of his posts, where he also revealed there will be 4 levels of difficulty in the game, just like in the originals. The following scene shows Skif navigating between anomalies, in what could be the swamps. We see an overturned wooden boat here, reminding of the boatyard. The hero is holding a bolt and the echo detector, which showcases the presence of a nearby artifact. The anomalies here are bubbles, similar to the one we saw in the Bolts and Bullets trailer. It appears such anomalies will burst into smaller bubbles when triggered by a bolt. Then we see a crashed helicopter basking in the beautiful sunlight. This is most likely the Stingray 5 chopper that fell down in the middle of an anomalous swamp in Zaton during the failure of Operation Fairway. To the left we see a common hogweed, a plant originally used in Slav countries to make the borscht soup, a very famous dish in Ukraine. Skif then finds himself at the construction site of Reactor 5, where he uses the SA Avalanche to shoot down a Monolithian preparing to throw a grenade. I must say this is one of my favorite weapons in S.T.A.L.K.E.R, and I can't wait to try it out in Heart of Chernobyl. The reloading animation is also shown, and we can see 4 ammo types as well for the 9x39mm caliber. The building and metallic structure here were spotted in full during the E3 gameplay trailer, so we can imagine exactly where this scene takes place. The interior of the building seems to be a mess, and I believe some scenes coming up in the trailer take place inside. Here we witness the inscription "Yuriy Macro dies," appearing on screen upon the Monolithian's death. Apparently, these are closed captions for accessibility feature. Other details include a new weapon dropped by Yuriy, the Chris Vector, interesting use of barbed wire on the wooden spikes, which could be remains of monolith barricades, and a small fire in the distance. Perhaps it's part of a thermal anomaly, or it might be our very first look at a Pyrogeist. Next, we have a walk into an interior or tunnel location, reminding of the Agroprom. Skif attaches a suppressor to his bucket S2, which is also equipped with a sight and laser pointer. The latter is an accessory we had not yet seen in the new game, and I think it will be a nice addition for people who play without crosshair like myself. The scene shows that even a small weapon like this one will have many options of customization, so I guess we can expect many such upgrades and attachments for every single type of gun. Then Skif goes through an underground area, dimly lit with spare emergency lights. It is very reminiscent of X laboratories and other dungeons of the zone, although the place is not as claustrophobic as you'd think thanks to a quite high ceiling, supported by large concrete pillars. I really love this design, along with the various tubes, grates and electrical equipment all around. There's also some gas masks thrown to the ground, and Skif is holding the Malyuk, which is named Vulcan M in the game. During the whole scene we hear the classic sounds of psi emissions, and then a scream we are all too familiar with. At the end of the corridor is the controller, who upon spotting the player instantly launches his psychic attack. The animation as well as the mutant itself are extremely similar to how they were in the original games. In fact, this controller is basically the same as it was in Shadow of Chernobyl, before their appearance was slightly changed. Furthermore, it also looks different from the one we saw in this screenshot taking place in Agroprom Underground. Either the appearance was changed during development, or there will be a few variants of the monster with visual disparities. Then Skif is inside a tunnel filled with electrical anomalies. Looks like the end has collapsed, offering a way to exit. However, in order to reach it, Skif has to go through the electrodes. The process is simple, yet one mistake will be fatal. Throw a bolt to trigger the anomaly, carefully walk over it while it recharges, and repeat with the next one, until you are on the other side. It's hard to see because of the darkness, but the character is doing exactly that. I feel like the time taken by the anomaly to reset and become dangerous again has become longer than before, since you really needed to run through it in the original. But it could be just my imagination. Moreover, Skif is holding the Veles detector, which displays the positions and types of anomalies and seems to have spotted an artifact, seen in red in the screen. The object looks to be right there, emitting an ominous light. Next to it, a splash in the water caused by the bolt thrown an instant earlier by our protagonist. Now, you may remember that in the previous games, the Veles detector did not have the ability to show anomalies on its radar. The only device that could do so was the Svarog detector, which actually was an experimental heavily modified version of the Veles. Therefore, it is possible the technology of the Svarog was directly built into brand new Veles models at some point in time before the new game. Or this feature will be an upgrade available at some technicians. About the detectors, it is interesting to note that according to the FAQ, some characteristics of the detectors have changed, with the goal of making each of them truly unique. If the special ability of the Veles is to map out anomalies, I wonder what the gimmick of the Bear, Echo and Gilka detectors will be. The following scene appears to be a continuation of the beginning of the trailer, since it takes place just outside the bunker Skif and Richter exited. Our heroes are each fighting a Monolithian in a fierce melee battle, with Skif trying to hold his own against an angry dude armed with a knife. We can briefly see the corpse of another Monolith Stalker as well as the gun he dropped, an AKS-74 with extended magazine. Skif's opponent is wearing the same armor as Strider, which was revealed to be called Corundum in the game. Unlike Strider, however, this one has the Monolith emblem clearly visible. The protagonist swiftly dodges a first knife slash, but gets kicked and then locked into a strength battle to avoid getting stabbed. He takes the opportunity to strike the crotch, pushing the enemy back, though he does not let go of his grip. At this moment we see Richter also struggling with his adversary. They both get knocked down, letting go of the AKS they were trying to get a hold on. Skif knows he needs to do something drastic to survive and gets an ID. He uses his left hand to break the visor of the car, unfortunately giving the opportunity for the Monolithian to stab him on the flank. But the counter-attack is ready, in the form of a quick punch. Finally, Skif grabs his head and slams it into the rusty pike, which pierces the man's skull entirely. It seems to have gone through both ears. Damn, what a brutal showcase. A gritty reminder that even if Richter sees the zone as beautiful, its laws are ruthless and death lurks at every moment. You will have to risk it all and use all your might if you want to survive. And here's the Skadovsk. What can I say? It's beautiful. On the left, a small dot seems to indicate the possibility to interact with this PDA. Maybe this guy is some kind of informant? The place is full of details and makeshift furniture, food items like vodka and bread loaves on the tables, classic carpets, maps or posters on the walls, various lamps and candles, and even what looks like to be a generator. Some couches were even set up, with a man who means business sitting there. Possibly the big boss of the place. Perhaps it's even Sultan. From the appearance of the people in the camp, it does seem the bandits have taken over the ship, so who knows. We then have a partial view of the Skadovsk bar, where a radio can be trifled with by our character. Certainly we will be able to change the music that plays in these safe areas. Behind the counter, a battery of utensils is ready for use, along with a bunch of alcoholic beverages and a non-stop energy drink. Last but not least, the bartender here is not entirely seen, however it has sparked a heated debate. Is this a woman? Many believe so, others claim it's actually a man. We don't have a 100% confirmation just yet, although whatever the answer, I am convinced women will in fact appear in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. Moving on, we now enter another bar and another ship. Indeed, this must be the Shevchenko, no doubt about it. We recognize it from the pair of stairs on each side of the counter. The main theory here is that bandits took control of the Skadovsk, Therefore, loners established a new base in the Shevchenko. The inscription reads, "Those who don't smoke and drink will die in an anomaly." Damn, I knew I would not last a day in the zone. We also noticed two small dots which show you can interact with both the character and the bartender, who triggered a huge reaction within the community. In the cancelled version of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 from more than a decade ago, there was already an idea to have a black stalker in the zone, so it seems they brought the concept back. While a minority, Ukrainians with black skin do exist, and this person could also be a foreigner. With institutions like the International Perimeter Security Force and the Scientific Institute for Research in the Chernobyl anomalous area being established, it is clear the zone has gained both a wider reputation around the world and more visitors from other countries. So this situation is not very surprising. Anyway, this bar also has a radio and many other objects to prepare food and beverages. Speaking of which, here's some canned meals, condensed milk, vodka, beer and energy drink. As for the second person in the scene, I must thank Lennic for sharing his theory with me. According to Lennic, this character could be the savior from Shadow of Chernobyl, or at least a reference to him since he looks similar. Then we see a serious looking character who I think has a good chance to be Beard. We assume he relocated his business to the Shevchenko. Whoever it is using quite a lot of old equipment, including a computer, radios and a telephone. There's also the portable radio that is used by many in the zone, as well as other supplies. In the back, weapons and ammunition are stored, with various types of mags, ammo boxes, shells laying around, an RGD-5 grenade, drinks, a bipod, binoculars, a muffler, knife, PMM, and even a revolver we've never seen in the game before. On the racks are what I believe to be Remington 700 and Dragunov sniper rifles. And we're back to Skadovsk, where Howl has improved his shop. He even has a scale to make sure the deals are fair. The main highlights here are once again the weapons. On the right are 700 and Kalashnikov rifles. Under the glass, a PMM, AK, Dragunov without the scope, Bucket S2 and R700 without the scope. In case you forgot, the reason I'm not surprised to see the Remington 700 is because we already saw it a long time ago in the dev's diaries, though we don't know how it will be called in-game just yet. While these scenes are being played, a man named Yuriy speaks in the background.
Зараз час такий. Час можливостей.
Apparently, Yuriy will be some sort of trader, but no more details are known yet. It is clear that his words gave its name to the trader, the time of opportunities. However, for the moment we don't know exactly what he is referring to. The zone has always been a place for opportunities, that's why most people enter it. Opportunity to clear your past and start a new life. Opportunity to live adventures, find yourself, get rich. Opportunity for science to make great discoveries and improve the condition of mankind. And so on. On top of all that, there has been moments in the zone's history where the area became even more a place of opportunities. For example, following the huge blowout at the beginning of Clear Sky, or right when the Brain Scorcher was disabled. These moments opened new paths and offered new ways for stalkers to achieve their goals. It is clear that something very important will happen that triggers the events of Heart of Chernobyl, but we'll have to wait for release to figure out what it is. Another weapon we knew was going to be in the game is the RPG-7, shown in this scene in all its glory. The location appears to be one of the derelict hangars in the Wild Territory. Skif, being chased by a Pseudogiant, attempts to reload the rocket launcher to fight the beast. I must note the accuracy of the animation, as the character presses the button during the process, like you would do on a real RPG. Unfortunately for him, the monster has caught up and jumps in the air, heavily landing to make the ground shake. As a result, Skif is thrown to the ground. This is an interaction we've already seen with the Bloodsucker in the Bolts and Bullets trailer, and that I even experienced in the demo. So it seems various mutants will have telegraphed attacks that, if you don't dodge, will make you bite the dust. In the previous games, the Pseudogiant did have the ability to make shockwaves by slamming the ground, but it never did it by jumping with its whole body. However, this is not really surprising considering the huge strength of the creature's muscles, especially on the legs, a feature shared by many other mutants that are able to make long jumps. Of course, we have to talk about the Pseudogiant's appearance. As my favorite mutant, I must say they nailed its design, because it still looks both goofy and terrifying at the same time. What I especially like with this new version is that you can tell even more it used to be human at some point. This is achieved with the facial expression, but mostly the fingers and nails that look so much like ours. A lot of people pointed out that the mutant now has hair. The reality is that it already had some in the OG games, but it was simply less visible because of a simple flat texture. Since there will be different variations of each mutant, it is also possible some Pseudogiants will have more hair than others. Who knows? Before moving on, I just wanted to point out the crate here with a similar design to those in the trilogy. The next few shots appear to take place in the building next to the cooling towers that we talked about previously, which is a Monolith Base. Indeed, Skif unleashes the power of the GP-37, killing several Monolithians in a row. There's scrap metal and other debris everywhere inside, providing an exciting setup for a firefight. And the sun rays, damn, they look beautiful. Skif showcases the reload animation for the GP-37 while climbing an improvised ramp that leads to an elevated structure, on top of which one of the famous Monolith makeshift antennas is proudly standing. These contraptions were built by Monolith fanatics as a representation of their godlike entity, and they gather around these shrines to pray and enter a trance. In Call of Prypiat, it was revealed a small sciometer was actually fitted inside the antenna, brainwashing the cultists further and providing them orders through the voice of the monolith, at least before they stopped functioning. We know the monolith does not really exist. It was all a ruse set up by those behind the creation of the zone in order to use the believers as their pawns. Skif now has the high ground, so he easily guns down another enemy. With the large view of the interior, we see more details like a derelict tractor, several dead Monolithians probably killed by our protagonist, and even heads planted on spikes, which is something the Monolith faction does to mark their territory. We also spot the base of the huge metallic structure outside, which confirms we are indeed in the building at the construction site of the cooling towers. During the combat, Skif comes to question the meaning of it all.
Усі ці жертви, усі ці смерті. Який в них сенс?
Probably the character will be conflicted about his actions, and at some point the player will have to make important decisions regarding the path to take for Skif's story. We will hear Faust's answer to Skif in a bit, but right before that we have this scene to take a look at. The character stands underneath a large tornado that is slowly closing in, an impressive and terrifying sight we've never experienced before in the zone. The exact location is currently unknown, though all the environment reminds of the container warehouse in Call of Prypiat. It did not have any platform or metallic crane, but it is possible it was improved and expanded in the new game, or it could be a brand new location, who knows. By the way, Spartan Mozi noticed this container floats in the air because it is not properly attached to the hook. The problem was instantly reported to the devs, who are going to fix it. As for Skif, he is holding the Veles detector as well as a brand new weapon, the S.T.A.L.K.E.R APS pistol, which apparently will be called APSB in the game. Now, about the tornado, there is a debate whether it is an anomaly or not. On the detector we can see a red dot in its direction, which could indicate the anomalous hazard or an artifact inside of it. From the previous scene with the Veles detector, it seems to me the red dot is for the position of artifacts rather than anomalies, but I could be wrong. In any case, it does appear the tornado is at least linked to anomalous nature. At some point we can see a huge lightning glow inside, which may be caused by an electro or a thunderbolt of some sort. Moreover, even if the tornado in itself is just like a normal tornado, the reason it formed in the first place could be the anomalous nature of the area. It is sometimes said that the creation of the zone had strange effects on the weather, spawning a variety of dangerous climatic phenomena. Further, we know some places and paths in the zone are inaccessible due to anomalous activity, and that's why guides are needed. But we've never really seen any kind of anomaly that could completely block the way to a location or force stalkers to take another route. Well, I think this might be it. This tornado may be an example of such an obstacle. Imagine a self-sustaining phenomenon like this one, that slowly moves around and destroys anything in its path. Get a bit too close and you'll be lost to the zone. Alright, it's time for the last scene, taking place after the fight opposing Richter and Skif to Monolithians. Our heroes have managed to defeat the enemy and are now laying on the grass. Skif removes the knife from his body, grunting in pain in the process. I guess the blade didn't find any vital parts. A nice detail is the emblem of the Ukrainian Marines carved on the side of the knife. Richter then takes off the gas mask of the corpse and sits down, appearing completely shocked. He glances at Skif and finally looks to the sky as the rain starts to fall. While all of this is going on, we hear the grave voice of Faust.
Зона така, якою бачиш і ти. Я ж показав тобі, якою я її бачу. Іди своїм шляхом, і тоді ти зможеш побачити зону по-своєму.
That's how the trailer ends, and of course the game is still coming out on September 5th. In case you've forgotten, Faust is this blind character, who seems to be a former Monolith member that was freed from the brainwashing, just like Strider. In the Come To Me trailer, it looks like Faust and his followers are having an argument with Strider and his men, and we theorized Faust might want to re-establish the former glory of the Monolith faction. However, it's only a guess, and his real intentions are still unknown. I believe the player will have to make a choice between helping Strider or Faust that will have big consequences for the main story. In any case, in this trailer, Faust implies that everyone can have a different view of the zone depending on their experiences with it, a philosophy that reminds me of the words of Hermit from Clear Sky. Indeed, this interesting character considered that what you think about the zone will actually come true. For example, if you think the zone is a horrible place, it will give you trouble. If you think it's a paradise, you may come to enjoy it. I guess it's all a matter of perspective. Now that we've finished the trailer, it's time to talk about theories. One thing we noticed is that apart from people who got freed from the brainwashing, like Strider and even Faust, the rest of Monolithians all seem to be bald. It is possible this is because they shave their heads in some kind of ritual, or maybe it's a rule of their faction, but a peculiar detail nonetheless, that may or may not become important later. Moving on, another theory about the Monolith members was shared to me by Spartan Mozi, who also provided some valuable information for this video. According to his theory, true Monolith stalkers are blind. Of course, we know Faust is blind, but we also saw the model of a Monolith soldiers whose eyes appear to be blind. Now, the dude Skif was fighting in the trailer seemed to have normal eyes to me, but it's possible only some of them are blind, or it's just the most dedicated members who eventually become blind. Perhaps as part of a ritual, or due to prolonged exposure to hazards such as the Sinister Screens, psi emissions, and other methods of brainwashing. In the Strider trailer, Faust said,
"I took just one awkward step, and my whole world plunged into darkness."
Making it sound he did not willingly become blind. Yet he may have been talking about something else, we're not sure. I guess it remains a mystery for now. Rolling back to this scene, the moment when Richter removes the gas mask and is shocked as a result feels like a significant detail of the trailer, about which many members of the community theorized. In the beginning, I thought Richter looked this way because he finally realized that maybe the zone is not as good a place he thought. Maybe he should be more careful and arm himself properly, because Skif and him were so close to dying right here and there. It makes sense, but it does not explain why Richter felt so compelled to remove this mask in the first place. Shouldn't he be worried about Skif's injury and go to see how he's doing in priority? That's when I figured that there must be something else going on. One possibility is that Richter knows who this stalker was. He had doubts about recognizing him during the fight and wanted to make sure. If that's the case, perhaps he knew this man before he became a Monolith member. That could happen. Let's take a closer look at this face then. Personally, I don't see any resemblance to anyone in particular, but there's been some wild claims about this man. For example, a theory says Richter recognized himself in him, explaining why he is so shocked. Another detail we notice is the way he died. It looks like a sharp object went through the gas mask and straight into the right eye. Some believe this is the same way Skif killed the other Monolithian, and have brought up the theory they might have been sharing some sort of link. When Skif pierced his opponent's head with the rod, his companion instantly suffered the same fate. To be honest, I don't really buy this for a few reasons. Firstly, the wounds don't seem to be the same. From what I can make out, the first guy died with the spike going through both ears, while the second one was hit in the eye. Secondly, even if our two Monolithians were somehow connected in such a way, would the gas mask really be broken in the process? Surely not, right? Thirdly, it is clear this scene does not take place immediately after the previous one. There is a short period between the two. This is because Skif killed the first guy on the right side of the car, and in the last scene he is suddenly on the left side of the car, much closer to Richter. Therefore, I conclude this Monolith Man was dealt with in between the two scenes, possibly from a gunshot in the head. Richter could have gunned him with his PMM, and who knows, perhaps he acts so shocked because he's actually a pacifist who killed for the first time. Now, if you were wondering, the ideas of the man looking like Richter and Monolith members having some sort of link do not come from nowhere. They are actually inspired by the concept of copies or clones, a piece of cut content from the S.T.A.L.K.E.R universe. Basically, the concept is that the zone could, in certain circumstances, create copies of stalkers. Alternatively, there is also the possibility of clones being created in X laboratories. A big conspiracy theory is that many members of the Monolith faction are actually artificially created, explaining why they are seen in such big numbers and even so many years after their faction started its decline. Could this be why they are all bald and failed copies turn out blind? There's no way to tell right now. But I'll be happy to read about your thoughts on the matter, that's for sure, so please tell me all about it in the comments below. I know there's still a lot to talk about, with many reviews of the new demo from journalists and other news, but this video is already too long for such a small trailer, so it's time to say goodbye. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Good hunting, stalkers.